All right, welcome to ESAS. Welcome back, everybody. So yeah, we're going to be watching Chris Stuckmann's I Have to Talk About This video that's been making the rounds lately. So we'll see how this goes. We'll see what he has to say. We're both relatively disconnected from his sort of sphere. I've never really watched any of his videos until today, so I have no idea pretty much anything about him besides he's a movie reviewer, and he's got like 2 million subs. That's about all I know about him, and I know a little bit about how this video was received. So let's see how it is. And of course, we are going to be experiencing this with our wonderful pal Swabby over here. So we will see how it goes as he decides to, revert back to his childhood for therapeutic reasons. A couple little updates, real quick. The Zombie Army series commentary is doing very well. Got a lot of editing done. I'm at about 3 hours of footage, and I think the whole thing might be about 5. So I should be getting close to finishing this by the end of March, if not completed. So look forward to that in the future. But apart from that, I don't really have anything to say besides let's get Stuckmannized, as the meme says. So, Swabby, would you like to say anything before we begin?
Yeah, in all seriousness, away from my childish antics, I did read a little bit about Stuckmann on Wikipedia. And when I say a little bit, like I skimmed through because I have a very strong opinion about critics of anything because I generally don't like them. But I did read a comment on Wikipedia that talked about what kind of inspired him to become a filmmaker. And I will say he has pretty good taste because he really enjoyed the movie Signs. I don't know if anybody remembers that movie from 2002. It starred Joaquin Phoenix, Mel Gibson, and a couple kids as the star cast of the Alien Invasion movie. That was a really good movie. So I kind of was coming in this ready to make fun of him really hard, but then I was like, I'm gonna give him a chance because that's a really good movie. So I know he has good taste. I'll put it that way. I know it's there. So I'm interested to see where this is gonna go.
Yeah, we'll see how this goes. And yeah, so the only reason I heard about this video, and the only real reason I guess we're reacting to it, is because I heard that it was a relatively controversial video for him to upload. And I know EFAP covered it, although I've not seen their coverage of it, so I don't know much of the context for what was said in the video, apart from I just know a couple basic things about Stuckmann's history. Basically, he's been on YouTube for a couple years. I don't know how long, but I think for at
2009,
least
I think 2009 is what it said on Wikipedia.
really,
Yeah. He began
damn,
publishing YouTube reviews of current films in his 20s and published his first film review in 2009.
wow,
I
he's been
don't know.
around.
He reviews it. He's began a short term series title. I guess that's his YouTube. I'm assuming because YouTube definitely was around in '09. I think YouTube started in '06. But
Yeah, YouTube started in '06.
yeah, he's been around for a
Yeah.
while.
Oh, wow, there's a lot more parallels between him and Jeremy Johns than I than I knew.
I
Because I
think
think
he's
he
one of the
also started in
originals.
2009.
Yeah, I think he's one of the originals. His total view count for his channel is 748.9 million per Wikipedia. So
Hmm.
that could change depending on how current this is up to date.
Yeah, but anyway, so basic gist from what I understand. Someone said, "Oh, I thought you suddenly developed an accent, Vangeris." Then you realized it was you. No, yeah, this is my alter ego, Swabby. Yeah, he's my more.
An accent. Hell yeah, brother. Yeah.
I've gotten really good at ventriloquism. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so yeah, basically, from what I understand, just a movie reviewer. Has been on the platform a while. Pretty big following, decent sized following, and this video kind of led to some controversial waves going out in the community. So other than that, don't really have any context for the video itself going in. We're going in kind of blind. I have heard that uh, there's a little bit of a meme going around that Stuckmann is quoted as saying something along the lines of, "I didn't realize how hard it was to make a film until he actually made his own," which some people have kind of pointed out. It's like, so did you not know it was difficult beforehand? Kind of a thing.
I have to comment on that because I think a lot of critics actually don't know how hard it is. I think they just talk out their ass a lot. They actually do not know how hard it is. It's like the same people who criticize books and don't actually write books,
Or don't
or
read.
yeah, God,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's like the it's like the people that criticize video games but don't play video games.
or the
It's
ones
like
that
you're
criticize
the
food and
worst.
don't eat or cook food that's that good.
You criticize food but don't eat.
Yeah. No, I have a very, very, very hard spot for critics, and I'm not easy on them at
Yeah,
all, at all. Even our friends over at like Critical Drinker, and them, I'm very hard on those guys. Like I make sure they get their shit right,
yeah.
you know, because it's
Well,
fair.
I think
But
part of
I
that,
can,
yeah.
I
I
was
was
gonna
gonna
say, I
say, I
can
think part
respect
of,
them a little bit
yeah,
more because you you don't make 8-hour videos without doing your homework. Wink, wink, Mahler. You know what I'm saying? Like that's a different type of critic that usually these guys are not like. Like you know.
yeah. It's also a thing too where um, channels like this kind of like this kind of format is super easy for the average person to like view. It's part of the reason why people like Chris Stuckman, Jeremy Johns, and the Critical Drinker succeed, as high as they are, millions of subs, because, they make videos that are short, concise, and to the point. So it's very easy and digestible. Whereas if you want more meat on your bones, then you go to someone like Mahler, who will go in an in depth breakdown of damn near everything in the film, especially on the writing side. So it's the kind of thing where they satiate different appetites. And it is important that audiences critique what they watch. And that's true from every medium ever where there is a creator and a enjoyer. There needs to be that symbiotic relationship of person creates thing, audience criticizes thing for the better. You know, artist improves on criticisms if they're warranted, and then the audience criticizes it again. It's that infinite loop of trying to get better content in general. But
Yeah.
a lot of stuff nowadays is just, we make our shit, and if you don't like our shit, then you're a bigot, right? And that's the kind of thing that's kind of permeated through a lot of critics, and that's
Yeah.
something that I think has put a lot of people off of A, trusting critics, and B, taking them seriously. Because like a lot of people that I know, kind of like in our generation, don't take a lot of these review sites seriously anymore. Like, we've known that Rotten Tomatoes is compromised for a while. I think they got busted for it last year with like actual like payments to critics on there to give good reviews and shit. A lot of other sites are very jacked just in terms of all this other stuff, and a lot of these websites that do review pop culture things are very forgiving pretty consistently for certain people and certain companies and all this other shit. But we live in an age where everybody is a critic now. Like everybody can be a critic, so everyone is, and so I can
Uh,
understand why some people might want to sift through the weeds, or might not want to sift through the weeds like other people do.
yeah.
But
Well, I mean, I'll comment on this before we start. Everybody's a critic, but it doesn't mean they're a good critic either. That's something to kind of look at too. Like, if you can't explain why a movie's bad, then you probably shouldn't be criticizing it, or why it's good. In my
yeah,
opinion, you should be able to concisely but logically explain why something doesn't work. Like, I'm pretty sure you and I could sit here for 3 hours and explain why the sequel trilogy is not good, and we could be very polite and polite about it, but logical too. That's why I don't like sites like Rotten Tomatoes where it's just like a couple sentences about why it's not good. It's like that doesn't tell me anything. Plus
yeah,
people are just so different. It's just you know I don't know. I'm not gonna comment more on it until I watch this video, but I'm very unforgiving to critics. But I will say this too. The reason I appreciate people a lot like Mahler, specifically Mahler, Critical, and uh, Nerdrotic is very good about coming from a comic book background of understanding the lore of
Yeah,
whatever's
he
being
understands the
shown.
fandom of the thing that
Yes.
he's talking about.
So that's his expertise. Mahler's expertise is just
It's very
he is
clinical.
he's very clinical to the point of where he's almost OCD about how he goes about these things. So you know you're going to get a long platform, deep understanding of, and it's more than just concise. Like it's deep and elaborate, and you have to set aside time, which is respectable. And the reason I like Critical a lot, especially out of both of them more, is because Critical's actually written books. And his books, from what I understand, are very good. I've read his reviews for them, and I want to get them and read them because it's generally a genre I don't read a lot. But his Ryan Drake series, I've heard is, or is it Drake Ryan? No, it's Ryan Drake. Is very good. It's a very good series. So, you know, he's coming from a point of like, hey, I've actually done this. I've written books. I know how to write characters. Like, you know, he understands it. So I kind of like that. You know,
Yeah.
that's what I can respect about the three of them and why. Generally speaking, I think if like people are going to watch reviewers, they need to at least consider those three because of what they can bring to the table versus, you know, some people that I won't mention.
Yeah. But it's also a thing about honesty, right? Like a lot of people are very, there's a lot of dishonesty in the critical sphere in this day and time. Like so many, um, there's all this fudging of numbers. One of the most famous ones is the Rise of Skywalker audience score being locked at 86%. Like it was locked basically from I think like a week in, and it never
Yeah.
moved, which is statistically impossible for a film that makes $1 billion. It's going to shift one way or another, right? But it was locked there, forever, right? And they've retooled. A lot of websites have retooled based on certain movies' performances, and also there's a whole bunch of shifting of goalposts and changing of rules to better suit a product that recently came out by certain corporations, right? And that's a big problem in the cultural sphere when it comes to criticizing shit. And that's one reason why you've got this sort of countercultural group of reviewers like Nerdrotic, Mauler,
Excuse me.
Critical Drinker, and many, many others who are just being honest, and even if you have a bad take, people can appreciate your honesty, you know. It's one thing if someone is giving the approved opinion, of something versus if they actually did like it, right? Because it's fine to like shit, right? Like, I'm not going to criticize you for liking shit. I'm going to criticize you for you thinking it's good when it's provable that it's bad, and that's the kind of thing that I think a lot of people misconstrue is that like does not mean good and hate does not mean bad, right? That's something that really gets thrown out way too much nowadays with criticism in general, like across the internet. But anyway, we've talked a while.
Yeah.
You ready to get into this?
Yeah.
All right. Let me know if it's too loud or too quiet.
So I just saw Madam Web. There was no screening for it in my area. There were no late night showings before the day, so I had to go see it on Valentine's Day.
Does he remind you of a gerbil by any chance?
No.
I don't know. I saw his face and just the way it's like his face is fat enough for his beard to show up under his chin. So it makes me think of just a fuzzy little face like a gerbil. I don't know why that popped. I don't know why that popped in my head just now, but I don't know.
No.
I thought of a gerbil for some reason, and I find that funny.
Nah, I didn't think of one. Pretty good though.
And I thought to myself, probably not going to do a video for this one based off of what I've heard, since I do try to keep it mostly about film celebration on this channel. Having seen the film, I'm going to tell you that this is not a movie review of Madam Web. I am not about bashing filmmakers, artists. I know how hard it is to make a movie.
This is one thing where that whole little bit, right? If you're going to be a movie reviewer, then you have to be willing to criticize things. Because otherwise, you're just a shill for the medium. Right? And you've basically, You know, you're not fulfilling your purpose in the profession that you are in. You know, and that's something that already setting the video off to a weird spot here by just saying, you know, I'm not here to bash movies, even though I'm a movie reviewer. It's like, okay, so
that doesn't make
what
sense.
do you do? Like, now, granted, there are certain channels that thrive off of doing specific types of things. You know, like a popular one I know of was the CinemaSins channel, right, where they purposely look for nitpicks and flaws in films, and they point them out and they count them all and show them in a video, right? Some people like that shit. There's also the opposite of that, which is Cinema Wins, which effectively does the same thing but for positives, right? So there's definitely a market to do that for the sake of like comedy and entertainment value and all this other shit. But when you are a movie reviewer, you have to be able to review a thing. And within being able to review a thing, you have to be able to say definitively, this is bad or this is good. If all you can say is this is good or this is great or this is amazing, then like why am I going to come to you for anything if you like everything?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Like what's the point of coming to your channel to watch your reviews if I know you're only going to give it positive? You know, like what, why come back? Like some of the funnest videos from Jeremy Johns, I compare him a lot because he's basically the same type of YouTuber where he reviews movies in a short, compact format, and he's been around as long as Stuckmann has. Is part of the fun of his reviews is that he really gets into it. He's very animated. He talks with his hands a lot, and sometimes it's really fun to watch him really praise something that you yourself also believe is amazing. Like Jeremy Johns' 3 videos for the Lord of the Rings trilogy are fucking fantastic to watch if you have seen Lord of the Rings, because he references a lot of fun shit in the films that are just cool, right? And he, you know, and his style of humor is very fun and charismatic. So when he reviews those things in a positive light, it's very fun. It's kind of a celebration of those particular types of films, but he's still a film reviewer, right? So on the opposite end of it, you have him review things that are notoriously dog shit, right? And where he will just lay into how terrible certain films are, you know, and that's a thing.
Wah, wah, wah.
Shit. Shit. Is the stream still going? Oh god, is it working?
Yeah,
You're back.
you're back.
Oh fuck, just fucking hell! Right in the middle of a rant too.
Yeah, well, maybe that was a sign that we should get on with the video. Oh god. We're like 4 seconds in.
Ah shit. Well, we'll keep doing it. When I re-upload this, it should be in a better condition anyway. So let's just keep going.
I do not know how hard it is to make a movie under the studio system. I was able to make an indie film without a giant corporation breathing down my neck, which is not the privilege that S.J. Clarkson had when she directed Madam Web under Sony, which I can only imagine was monumentally difficult. This is not going to be a video about Madam Web and telling you whether or not you should see Madam Web. There are plenty of people on this platform, as well as a website dedicated to aggregating reviews and giving it a number that's going to inform you of that, and you can choose to listen to those voices if you want. The information is out there. What I am compelled to make a video about is something that I heard pretty much every writer, some directors, and most actors bashing last year, and that is movie studios. But before we go any further, I do want to give a special thank you to the sponsor for this video, Better Shot. Past few years have been.
Let's skip this shit.
In the case of Madam Web, this movie was put out by Sony, much to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. In the case of Madam Web, this movie was put out by Sony in association with Marvel, probably not to the level of association that Tom Holland's 3 Spider-Man movies were. This video is inspired by essentially every live action film that Sony has had some involvement in since Spider-Man 3 in the Spider-Man verse, that being Spider-Man 3, The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, Venom, Venom Let There Be Carnage, Morbius, and Madam Web. Since it got pushed back due to the strikes last year, none of us got to see what Sony did with Kraven the Hunter, but we will this year, so I can't really comment on whether or not Sony treated that property with respect. And of course, I know that Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man films don't necessarily relate to the Sony Spider-Man.
All right, pause it.
Set up right now.
I want to make a quick comment, then we'll get back to it. Sony really needs to stop with bringing out these villain stories. Like, stop. It worked with Venom because Venom is a very recognizable character in the Spider-Man universe. And was
Well,
one of
he's
Spider-Man's...
an anti-hero in that story, though. And I feel like it's a thing where Venom is the largest of the anti-heroes in Spider-Man's repertoire.
Him and Green Goblin will be the 2 biggest. Kraven was one of Spider-Man's early enemies and the comic series. Morbius, if I remember right, was kind of like a early mid enemy, I think. I'm not too familiar with Morbius, but anyway, both of those guys are not as popular as Venom, so I think it's like a waste of time. I don't know what Sony's trying to go for, but it's kind of a waste of time. If I had to be honest, I don't see why they would do that, because it's not as interesting as like Venom. Hell, even Carnage is more interesting than those 2. I don't know. I just feel like Sony's really dropped. I don't know. I don't know why they're doing that. It doesn't make sense.
I mean, I think it's probably just a delayed reaction with the whole cinematic universe craze that was going on for a while. You know, a lot of studios tried to get their cinematic studio like up and running. You know, just for this, just for their like if you own the rights to an IP that has multiple things you can do movie wise, it's kind of a thing where like why not try to make a cinematic universe out of it? But it's one of those things that makes me, you know, like think that Sony's kind of late to the party on that, and also just I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to make their own Spider-Man universe because they think that it would be successful, especially now, kind of like a post 2019 MCU. The only films that have really made a profit of any sorts or have been quote unquote like actually successful have been Spider-Man, No Way Home. I think Doctor Strange barely made a profit, but it was like ridiculously expensive. And I think Guardians barely made like a couple million after all expenses. So like Marvel's not the juggernaut it is anymore. But Spider-Man was like, I think the biggest movie of what was it, 2020? Was it 2021 or 2022? It came out.
I don't remember. I haven't watched it, so I didn't
But
really.
yeah, but from what I understand, that was the biggest movie of its like year. Um, and I think it's a thing where they want to, like, they took the wrong messages from that, where they think, oh, Spider-Man properties succeed where other superheroes fail. So let's take these characters that we have the rights to as Sony, and then make movies around that shit. And the problem is they just made dog shit movies. Like
Yeah,
I
I
heard
think
Morbius was terrible.
it is terrible. It's
You know,
very
Madam
bad.
Web's terrible from everything I read about it and saw about it in clips. It looks
Haven't
like
watched
Kraven the
it.
Hunter will probably be terrible too. I mean, Venom, while fun, wasn't super engaging. You know, and I don't know how, and I know that Venom 2 didn't do that well by comparison to the first one. You know, so I just don't think that they understand, you know, how I don't think that Sony understands how best to use Spider-Man at this point. You know, and I think it's a thing where they're kind of stuck wondering, do we try to continue with Tom Holland as Spider-Man and just have him go through other heroes and shit, or do we continue with like a new Spider-Man and kind of reboot the franchise, kind of like with what's already happened, right? You know, I feel like Sony's in a weird space just because the last movie they were a part of with Spider-Man, like with Spider-Man directly, did phenomenally, but everything else is kind of falling apart. And I wonder if they're catching up to the fact that, okay, maybe the shared universe with Spider-Man is not going to work unless Spider-Man is actually in the fucking movie. Because a little bit of a backstory for Madam Web specifically.
Oh God.
Madam Web was supposed to have a lot of Spider-Man stuff in it. And they were trying, and this is how incompetent they are. They tried to have it tie in to the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, but they got their timeline wrong and had all of the events in Madam Web take place in the early 2000s, I think in 2003, but Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man takes place in like 2012.
Yeah.
So
So
they're
that was
way
Tobey
fucking off.
Maguire. It was like a Tobey Maguire.
Yes, but they
Spider-Man.
shot a bunch of Spider-Man scenes with references to him, and they had to cut him out because in the story, he's not that old yet. Like at the time of this thing happening, they were trying to do the Tom Holland thing at first, and then they had tried to switch over to Andrew Garfield, but they got their like they fucked up their timeline over and over and over. From what I understand, they just can't do basic math. And so in Madam Web, the end result is that a Peter Parker is born during the course of that film, right? Which is kind of a thing where it's like, why the fuck is like, it's one of those things where they just constantly try to rebuild this thing around the idea of Spider-Man being in the universe, but they just kept losing all the possible momentum they could have had if they actually had a Spider-Man in the movie. It also doesn't help that the movie trailers lied about it.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so that I think the Spider-Man thing with Marvel, or not with Marvel, with the Sony is just they want to have a cinematic universe, but it's just not working because they're making dog shit movies with characters that aren't supposed to be heroes in the first place. You know, like I've seen a couple of things about some of these villains, right? Like I remember watching a 3D animated Spider-Man thing that came out, I think in like 2006 or something, right? Kraven the Hunter in it was really fucking cool, right? But can he carry a movie as a protagonist?
No.
No, it's like making a Star Wars movie where Darth Vader is Darth Vader, the protagonist of the movie. It's like he's a great character, but would he be able to helm a movie, you know, that's in this larger narrative? And it's like I think the answer is no. You know, no matter how much you like a character, you know, you're not going to have certain characters that can, you know, be the focal point of the film.
Whoa. Are you talking about Darth Vader? Like limbs cut off in the suit, or are you talking about Anakin? Because they
I
already
said
did
Darth
Anakin.
Vader, Darth Vader,
Okay.
Darth Vader, where it's Darth Vader as the
Okay.
focus of the
Well,
entire film, and he's the
Anakin in
protagonist of it
Episode 3 was Darth Vader. Rise, I shall call you Darth
in the
Vader.
end.
Yeah, he's technically Darth Vader. So I think they could do something with Darth Vader. I think a better example would be like Darth Maul, where he wouldn't really make a lot of sense to have a standalone film. which is just my opinion, but because there's already been so many comics about Darth Vader that's been very interesting.
Well, the main point is that you're taking a villain that people like and then putting him in a role that he's not suited for.
Well,
That's what
especially
that's what I'm
Craven.
talking about.
Well, especially Craven. I don't think Craven was ever that interesting to me, personally, from what I read about him and what my dad and I used to talk about, because he was a big Spider-Man comic fan, and he had like all of them growing up. Like when I say all of them, he had fucking all of them. And I tried talking to him. I tried talking to him about it, but he's not aware of the movie, so he was gonna check it out and then let me know. But basic gist of it from somebody who's actually read the comics, Spider-Man needs Spider-Man to survive. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Well, continue with your point, but I think what Vic's saying is kind of
Oh,
true. It's like
yeah.
every non-Spider-Man Spider-Man movie has usually had issues besides Venom.
Right. Well, what point was I going with? Fuck it. I don't remember now.
You were talking about your dad going to see Craven the Hunter and give his
Oh,
opinion on
yeah,
it.
yeah. So basically, we have our own Nerdrotic. My dad, like, he's basically kept up with it, and he agrees that he liked Morbius because he's into the vampire stuff. But the whole point of it is you take Spider-Man and you follow Spider-Man through his journey of being Spider-Man while having interesting villains fight him throughout his journey. And at different stages, Spider-Man is either smarter, weaker, depending on what's going on in his life with, Gwen, Mary Jane, anything like that. So that's what makes Spider-Man interesting and why the villains are interesting, because at what point of time they come into his life and what they can do to him and how they manipulate society to view Spider-Man or whatever. So
Yeah,
that's
it's
that's
that.
what
Yeah,
basically he was like, there's no need
sorry.
for a Craven origin story. It's cool and he liked it, but there's no need because the basic pinpoint of Sony should be Spider-Man.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things too where when you get a good villain and a good hero, and you put them together in a film and it's well written, then you get something that's greater than the sum of its parts. Whereas if you take the villain and make them like the lead in their own film, they have to carry it completely. And when you kind of know that they're a villain or that they're supposed to be a villain or supposed to be an anti-hero or something, it becomes much harder to sell if it's going to be a part of a universe where they're traditionally a villain against the hero that everybody fucking loves. Right. So I think things are just stacked against trying to create stories with specific, like either making villains anti-heroes or just villains in general, like in the Spider-Man universe. I think Venom was able to get away with it to some degree because, well, they had Tom Hardy. A lot of people like Tom Hardy. We're a part of that group. Venom has been written as an anti-hero several times, right? So it's not completely out there for him to be sort of a vigilante that works for good in quote unquote sense, right? It's not that far-fetched to have a Venom movie where Venom is a lead as a anti-hero sort of a thing, right? He's probably one of the more popular Spider-Man villains and just characters in general besides Spider-Man from everything I've seen. But I think it's a thing where just Sony's kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel looking for things to create around Spider-Man, but completely forgetting that you have to have that Spider-Man there to help cement them. It's like Spider-Man's interaction with Doc Ock and with Green Goblin and with Venom and with all these other characters makes them a lot more interesting than them on their own, right?
Yeah, well, they've already proven that you can make a villain backstory in a Spider-Man movie. Just look at Doc Ock, look at Green Goblin. It's totally possible, like, to have a snippet about the villain and their backstory with, it's still being a Spider-Man movie. I don't understand why they're doing away with that. I think it's because of the fucking bullshit over at Marvel, where Marvel's trying to franchise everything and make everybody have their own film. But if I was going to make a villain movie in a Spider-Man universe, there would be only 2 movies I would ever make involving a villain that Spider-Man has faced: Green Goblin 1 and Green Goblin 2. Green Goblin and Hobgoblin, his son. It's the only ones I would make, because those were the 2 biggest villains Spider-Man had, or at least the most popular, that a lot of people can agree on, this was cool as shit. Because you could pull James Franco in, I'm sure, because they make so much money over at Sony, they could pull him in, and they could pull in wow, I just forgot his name.
Willem
Why?
Dafoe.
William Dafoe, like easily could do that, or they could just, give somebody else a chance. Either way, it's like, why are you using like B tier villains? And I know Craven's been in like the series before, and he's a pretty popular villain. But to me, considering when you stand him next to giants like Venom and the Green Goblin, he's kind of B tier, considering the amount of comics that like Green Goblin was in or the Hobgoblin was in. Why not use that opportunity to make those movies? I don't understand like the kind of the direction they're going in, especially with something like Morbius. That was just a fucking joke. Oh my god. I watched it. It was terrible. It's fucking terrible. Next thing you know, they'll be trying to do Man Wolf. Ugh.
Yeah. Well, I was going to bring up another point too that I think part of the reason why Sony's having trouble with making like Spider-Man stuff that's non-Spider-Man, I think is because they're hoping to get another. They were hoping to get another deal with Marvel, like during the production of these films, and so they couldn't necessarily use Spider-Man. But I think that contract that they had with Marvel has elapsed totally at this point, so they can kind of do whatever they want with Spider-Man. And I think they've also realized that Marvel needs Spider-Man more than Spider-Man needs Marvel at this point. Like every Spider-Man film has been super successful, right? Even after the end of like the main MCU story, right? Like the MCU's on a crash and burn trajectory. Spider-Man like made a fuck ton of money in his last movie, right? So Sony must be aware that like, okay, Spider-Man will still work, but we have to figure out how to make it work and make it work into the future, And I saw someone bring this up, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea, but I think it'd be kind of weird, is if you treat Spider-Man similarly to how we kind of have multiple James Bonds, and you just kind of adapt different story arcs with different actors portraying Spider-Man. Kind of like with what happened with like the first 4 Spider-Man movies. You had the first 3 with Tobey Maguire, where it was like Green Goblin's the villain, then Doc Ock's the villain, then you get Sandman, Hobgoblin, and Venom in the third one. That's little overstuffed, but you get the point there. And then in the Amazing Spider-Man, they did I forget the guy's like villain name, but what's his name? Dr. Connors,
Dr.
the
Connors,
lizard
yeah.
guy, whatever that here.
Dr.
I forget.
He turns
Is
into
that
a
his
lizard.
like villain name?
Yeah, they just call him Dr. Connors. That's kind of what he's known as. I don't know what he calls his reptilian form. I don't know if he has a name for it. He was a very early enemy too. I think that might have been Spider-Man's first enemy. No, it was fuck. What was it? Vulture, I think, was his first enemy. Maybe. I don't know. But Dr. Connors was an original. He was an original enemy of Spider-Man.
Yeah. Well, like the point I'm making though is that like you can have like Spider-Man's got enough villains where you could do a rogues gallery style thing where you just kind of pick and choose different ones for different movies. And if you write it well, you've got a pretty sizable palette of films you could make, either with one Spider-Man actor or with different ones across like different generations or whatever. Like it's possible to work like that, but I don't think Sony's competent enough to make that work, right? And I think it'd be weird for audiences at first. Like they'd have to get used to it.
Yeah. Well,
or they'd have to get used to having a different Spider-Man every couple of years.
Well, here's the thing about it I'm trying to understand is the writer strike. Is that still going on, or has that been like done for a while? Because I haven't kept up with it as much.
I think it's resolved. I think it was resolved about I'd say like maybe 7, 8 months ago, I think.
Oh, really? So it's been a while.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It ended like in the middle of last year, I think. But we've had different strikes. We had the writer strike for a while, and then I think they settled, and then I think the actors.
Oh my god.
Had like a strike for a little bit, but then they said, as far as I know, I don't think there are any more strikes going on in Hollywood. in terms of like the writers and actors. There might be more, but that I've just not heard about yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as I know, those things are resolved, and that's part of the reason why. It's part of the reason why 2024 doesn't have hardly any films coming out.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah,
Is like,
because that delay, really impacted like basically
Yeah.
every production outside of ones that were either nearly complete or ones that were already complete beforehand. But anyway, we just went on a huge tangent.
we can do that. It's okay.
Yeah.
The crowd understands at this point.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. All right, let's get back to what he was saying.
Nor do Andrew Garfield's movies, but this is not about that. This is about how Sony treats their characters and their properties, and more importantly, how they treat their filmmakers and what exactly is going on, because I have so many questions. When you look at the films I mentioned that Sony has made, there's of course division from people about whether or not all of them are bad or good, and some people like more than others. There's plenty of people who like the first Venom movie, but I think there are more people who are a little disappointed by it, and especially the Let There Be Carnage sequel. But plenty of people enjoy Spider-Man 3 well enough. I'm one of them. There's a lot of things in Spider-Man 3 that I have fun with, although it's clearly not as good as 1 or 2. And there are...
Oh, wait, was that a criticism? Was that like not being positive about a film? What? Huh? Makes you think he's picking and choosing his targets.
Perhaps.
There are people who enjoyed the Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 quite a bit. But I think that if you were to look at a consensus, the consensus is that the live action Sony-based Spider-Man universe movies have not exactly all been home runs. I haven't mentioned the animated Spider-Verse films.
This is the one thing I want to like say too is like, what franchise is all home runs from start to finish? Like rarely. Like rarely.
You can argue certain phases of Marvel was like when you got to be honest. Some of the Marvel movies back before they got stupid, like pre-Infinity War, were pretty damn good, man. Yeah. Most of them were pretty damn good.
The thing is, like I've like that's the thing I would like kind of say though is like,
also what's a home run?
When
you have to define.
Yeah, like
too.
what counts as a home run too is like you have to qualify that, and you have to qualify well where does it start and end sort of thing, right? Because even when you look at something that is like generally regarded as like fantastic, like Lord of the Rings trilogy, for example, then you have The Hobbit that is also attached to it, right? And those films are much lesser, and the reception to those, is much lesser than those things. Like they made money, and most people liked them and enjoyed them, but they weren't the home runs that Lord of the Rings trilogy were, right? Similar thing with kind of Star Wars with the OT and then the prequels. Sequels, made them become like trashy Walmart, just hobos. But anyway, like the point is, just thinking about like how many franchises actually have home runs that are not just one-off films. Like films that never make a sequel, never get a sequel, right? Like if you want to, like I can think of a couple films that if they stayed as one film, I think would probably be remembered for a long time. I think Joker is a pretty recent one. If there was never a sequel to that, it would be a fantastic movie regardless. With the sequel coming out, I wonder how that's going to do. Gladiator, same thing. Gladiator is fucking glorious, right? But they're working on a sequel to it, apparently.
Oh God, don't.
And it's like, what the fuck? So it's that thing where like how many franchises have actually been home runs from start to finish and have not been leached off of forever, right? And I think the answer is probably extremely rare. But I mean, as far as I know, though, I think most of these Spider-Man films have always been pretty successful besides Amazing Spider-Man 2.
I would say so.
I know that
because I didn't watch the second one because, like you said, I wasn't interested in it. I think it was Rhino was in that one. Rhino, yeah. And
well, from what I remember watching the second one, and I believe that. Let's see, I'm trying to look up the actual like box office numbers here for each one. Trying to see where it all is. Come on, where are your damn box office numbers? Come on.
You just look on Wikipedia. I don't know how accurate it is. $709 million. That's what I got out of a $200
Yeah.
million budget.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Yeah, so so each movie in the Sam Raimi trilogy did really well. First Spider-Man made 800 million. Second Spider-Man made about 800 million, a little less. Spider-Man 3 made almost 900 million, right? So obvious successes. Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 both did over 700 million, but I think their budgets were kind of high. Yeah, their budgets were abnormally high for Spider-Man movies. But and then you got the MCU Spider-Man movies. Spider-Man: Homecoming almost 900 million, Far From Home 1.1 billion, and then No Way Home 1.9 billion. Right, so Spider-Man is obviously consistently successful, and I think the biggest problem, and I'm not going to count the Spider-Verse movies because they're basically offshoot Spider-Man. They're not really Spider-Man in my eyes, right?
Yeah, because it's not about Peter Parker.
It's not about Peter Parker. Peter Parker's Spider-Man. But yeah, I think the main point, though, to be gleaned is that you need to keep budgets down. That way, your film can be successful, right? Because because when you look at the MCU Spider-Man movies, their budgets were consistently less than the Sam Raimi and Amazing Spider-Man series, right? Homecoming was 175 million, Far From Home was 160, No Way Home was 200, which is like standard price for superhero movies. Now, granted, MCU's had a lot of like tax shit come out lately that made their films a lot more expensive than they originally appeared to be, but the point is that like Spider-Man is pretty consistently successful if you make it within a certain budget range. And that's something that I think that they have to figure out over at Sony.
Yeah.
In order to make them like consistently successful. But yeah. Let me go back here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Not exactly all been home runs. I haven't mentioned the animated Spider-Verse films, both of them being terrific. The way I view the
one thing I got to mention about the Spider-Verse stuff, a lot of people like the art style. I actually don't. I find the art style kind of annoying, actually.
I'm not big on watching cartoons, so yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just I haven't mentioned the animated Spider-Verse films, both of them.
Well, let me go back to that one shot of that like of the cop.
All
I think it's his dad or his uncle.
I haven't mentioned the animated Spider-Verse films. But
yeah, it's like that little clip of him like moving looks really and I don't know if this is just video quality of his video affecting it, but it looks like the frame rate is sort of choppy. And that's the thing I don't like about this sort of like 3D but meant to look 2D but also 3D like animated shit. I don't like that kind of blend of the two mediums.
I think it's the same software as the Walking Dead video game, the first one that came out. It's like in that same software platform. So I don't know. I don't really.
I don't know either. I've never been impressed by the art style. It's very unique, but that doesn't mean it automatically it's good.
Yeah. I'm gonna be honest. I've always been this way. You and I have both always been this way. If you want to make an offshoot of a famous series, that's fine. But there needs to be a common ground and agreement that Spider-Man is always Peter Parker. Peter Parker's a nerdy white boy that lives in New York, who's young, who's trying to go through all the various navigations of being 18 years old and in college or in high school. So, when they start doing this offshoot shit of, what if this person was Spider-Man? I don't really care. I mean, that's just personally my opinion. That's why I can't get into like the Spider-Verse, Madam Web. I just don't give a shit because it's not Spider-Man. I don't care. That's like what you and I were saying, and what I don't understand what he's saying about home runs. How can you have 3 different Spider-Man start date or launches with 3 different actors and they all do fairly well? What do you mean that's not a home run? All of them did better than a lot of Marvel movies did and have a lot more remembrance than most Marvel movies do. So I don't understand what you mean by not a home run. Do you mean the acting? Well, sure, you can argue that there's some acting in Lord of the Rings that sucks. Is that not? Does that mean it's not a home run now? It's like, come on, dude, what are you fucking talking about?
Yeah,
It
it's like
financially did well.
yeah, it's like how much success do you need to reach before you hit a home run, right? Does it have to have a huge like score from every media outlet? Does it have to make $1 billion? You know, like this is the problem I think with some people when they make concise reviews like this, where they kind of forget to qualify things, because then the audience is left wondering like, what do you actually mean by home run? Because every Spider-Man film that we just looked up, besides these animated ones, has made over $700 million every single time,
Yeah,
with a couple cracking $1 billion or getting close, right? So like Spider-Man is clearly a successful brand as a character, right? Even if they don't necessarily uh, make their budget back appropriately and make enough profit, right? But still, they are obviously successful, right? So again, it's that thing where we can only speculate on what he actually means by home run.
yeah. That's
But
why I'm just like, like
yeah,
him saying that made me just realize how this video is going to go now, because it's not giving enough. A home run to you could be different to me, could be different to him, and I would think you and I agree that
yeah,
usually if a film makes a lot of money, it's probably a home run
yeah.
because enough people went and watched it, and there was enough word of mouth for people to go watch it. So
I'd say it's probably a mix of is it a good movie and did it make a lot of money? Like I would say that Joker is a fantastic example of a home run, right?
yeah, I would
Tiny
have to agree with
budget,
that.
like I think almost 1.1 billion in revenue, and it was a fantastic film,
Yeah, it was
right?
like
Absolute home
55
run.
million, 55 million to make, and then made 1.079 billion.
Yeah,
That's
like
a
fucking
fucking massive profit.
that is a home run. That is a massive return on investment.
Yeah.
But yeah. I think one thing too about I think this is one reason why the Spider-Verse movies are doing well enough but aren't really doing super well is just the way they kind of treat the other, like the whole like my some of my family are absolute normies. They just like watching things just to have cool things happen, right? They don't really think about the deeper like uh stuff within it, right? And the most recent Spider-Man animated film basically has all the Spider-Men and women fighting against Miles Morales because they all agree that people need to die for them to become Spider-Man. And that's the thing that I think is like, from everything I've heard about Spider-Man and seen up to this point, that's not fucking within Spider-Man's character. Like Spider-Man's the guy that fights for everybody,
Yeah.
right? Like, and we see that like over and over and over in like every medium. A good example is the near the finale of the first Spider-Man Sam Raimi movie when it's like save the woman you love or save the group of little kids, right? And you see them both go, and that's a great shot by Sam Raimi, by the way. When you see Spider-Man's mask and you see Mary Jane falling in one eyepiece and the kids falling in the other one, and he goes after both of them, that shows you what Spider-Man is. He doesn't make the tough decisions. He goes for everybody. He works his ass off to save everybody. And just hearing that plot point from the Spider-Verse movie made me think they are just making shit up to make Miles special, which is the fucking problem with all these derivatives. It's the biggest fucking problem with them is that they have to demean the other characters to make them better. Why don't you just make him a good character? And from what I understand, this was not the case in the first Spider-Verse movie. From what I understand, Peter was actually a good Spider-Man in that movie. It's just one of those things that annoys the piss out of me when they have to bring down other characters to raise their characters up. But anyway,
Yeah.
we keep ranting about other shit.
Well, I didn't know. I actually didn't know the Miles Morales thing was like that. That's kind of disappointing. Always
Yeah.
trying to change. They always try to change some shit, man. They're trying to be creative when they ain't creative. They just need to go get a fucking real job. They need to go work a 40-hour week doing office work or something, because they just ain't. It just they just don't have it. At this point, let's just be honest. Most of these fucking writers, these directors, these producers, you know, this is where the meanness comes out of me that I told you had in me earlier. They're fucking useless. They don't know how to write anything. They don't have the capacity to truly understand what fans want. They don't have the the spark per se in them, like somebody like Peter Jackson had to remake something that was first an adored book series and then turned into something even greater. So some of these people can't even fucking read the comics. Like for example,
I can't be bothered to read a comic.
yeah, they can't be bothered to read a fucking comic that's literally not that big. It's not that big.
It's like a short picture book.
Yes, exactly. I mean,
like,
graphic
come on.
knovels are longer,
Not
but
knocking comics, but like it's super easy to read.
yeah, no, they're very easy. That's why they made them, because they're easy to read and they're entertaining. And then it's all across the board though. I'm not gonna get in a tangent about things like The Witcher, but still, it's all across the board. And then it pisses me off to see them complain about the writing and how they're not getting paid enough. It's like, well, if you do your job better, just do your job better. Do you want to write because you love to write, or for the money? Because if it's for the money, you're in the wrong fucking business, dude. So just be honest with yourself. If you want the money, then you're probably go be a technical writer for a company. Don't sit here and fucking write for Hollywood and expect to make hundreds of thousands of more dollars than you already make. Like, get the fuck out of here, man. Just excuses at this point.
Yeah. Well, back to the video.
Yeah, fuck these people, man.
That's rant number 2.
Both of them being terrific. The way I view the 2 Spider-Verse movies is kind of the same way I view The Invisible Man and Split and Get Out and other films that Blumhouse has produced. Because Blumhouse has produced a lot of other movies as well. But those 3 really do seem like, damn, where'd those come from? Some studios have really good instincts, and they can pick filmmakers and stories across the board that for the most part are going to be at least decent. I look at a studio like A24. Pretty much most of their movies, if you see a trailer for an A24 film, you can probably bet that it's not going to be terrible, that it's at least going to be decent, and maybe even really good. And I don't feel that way with every single studio. It's like a flip of a coin. You could get one of their best efforts, or you could get another one. And I do think it comes down to the filmmaker they're working with and whether or not they back off and give that filmmaker the freedom they need to tell a cohesive, coherent story. That doesn't mean that every writer is going to be great. 2 of the writers of Madam Web worked on another film in the Sony universe that has been heavily criticized called Morbius. But sometimes what I've learned and what I've experienced myself, not on my film, but on scripts that I've optioned to some studios, and it went nowhere, is that when people have power over you as a creative, when they're paying your bills and they're paying you well, they can tell you to do anything and you have to do it, no matter what. It's like that scene in Vampire's Kiss where Nicolas Cage is threatening to fire his secretary and he says,
"You're the lowest on the totem pole here, Alva. The lowest. Do you realize that?" "That's right, Alva. It's a horrible, horrible job."
In CSS grids, we have grid
What the
items,
fuck?
which are the direct children of a grid
Fucking
container.
stupid ads.
We create one by adding.
Shut the fuck up.
I couldn't think of a more horrible job if I wanted to. And you have to do it. You have to, or I'll fire you. Do you understand?
Sometimes that's exactly
That face, man.
Dude, Nicolas Cage is such a good actor. He definitely can get into any role.
I love how just over the top he is. It's so good.
exactly what it feels like when you're a creative dealing with a larger entity that has control over your creation, or at least your script or your story or your characters. When they can tell you what to do and you got to do it, it doesn't matter if you think it's insane. You have to find a way to make it work. Now, I'm not saying that's what happened on Madam Web and Morbius and all these movies, but I would not be surprised, because when I look at Sony's involvement with the Spider-Verse films, I see Lord and Miller that have had massive success on the big screen in the past, that have made a lot of money for a lot of people and have proven themselves to be very smart at what they do. And I can totally see a company like Sony saying, why don't you guys give us your best shot and then we'll give you some notes. Now, for a filmmaker,
I mean, this is one thing, like, to be fair to Lord and Miller, the 2 guys he showed, little context, they were the people who shot the original version of Solo, a Star Wars story, before Kathleen Kennedy fired them and then replaced them with Tom Brown Howard, or Todd Howard, I don't know. Where the fuck. But so it's also a thing too to notice that they can make successful films, right? Like not the Amazing Spider-Man, the multiverse of whatever the Spider-Man film series, whatever that shit's called, right? The budgets are not that big, right? And they do well, but neither of those films have eclipsed any other Spider-Man film, right? So I think this is the thing where Stuckmann's words are kind of coming to bite him in the butt a little bit, because he's shown that these guys can be successful, but by your definition, they're not hitting a home run, because they are the lowest of the Spider-Man films that have come out, besides like a weird 1977 one that was like $1 million or whatever.
Yeah. Couldn't you like argue that's the same thing with like the Hobbit series? Because Peter Jackson missed the ball drop, even though you and I had a discussion about this the other day about what actually happened. So,
yeah.
I don't know where this guy's trying to go with this. I mean, what's he trying to say?
Yeah, it's it's like he set up a way to criticize things as not being home runs, and then praises people for making things that would not be home runs given his own standard. So it's just confusing to like listen to what he's saying.
Yeah, I still actually don't know the point of this fucking video. Like, what's the point? Like, are you trying to defend Madam Web? Like, what's going on here, man? Madam Web sucked. It just sucked.
What are we talking about right now? What are we actually talking about?
Like S.J. Clarkson, who made Madam Web. She's had a long and respectable career directing television, but she's directing her first movie, and it's a Sony superhero movie. When I saw Madam Web earlier today,
you cannot write television and think you're going to come to movies. It's not the same.
It's very different.
It's very different.
You can see that in all of the Star Wars Disney Plus series, because several of them started out as a film, and then they transferred them into a TV show. And when you look at how little actually happens in the show, you can see that these people cannot write television if they wrote a movie script, and vice versa, right? Like Ahsoka wastes, I think, a good hour of your time by having characters look at shit for a really long period of time, walk into ships, walk out of ships, just look at things. Like there's a lot of just wasting time in some of these like series. And I think that's something that's very indicative of you don't know how to make this meaningful beyond just stretching the time so that you can say that you made a TV series when you really just should have made a movie. But to his point, though, actually, let me back that up just so I can get the full point again.
Directing her first movie, and it's a Sony superhero movie.
There it is. Okay. This is not a Sony superhero movie, despite what you would believe. The trailers show you a clip of all the women in their different spider suits. That's a vision that the antagonist in the movie has. They are never in costume in the movie besides that vision. They never have powers in this movie. The only one that actually has abilities is the titular character, Madam Web. And even then, she's never in a costume until the very end. Right? So this is not really a superhero movie as much as it is just a thriller type of thing. And even then, it's not really a thriller. So like, it's one of those things where I think calling it a superhero movie is misleading, because you have a guy having visions of people that will have powers, and then a woman that can predict the future. That's not going to be super impressive as a superhero film, when it's basically just Final Destination, but being able to fix it.
Wow. Yeah. Didn't Madam Web come out in theaters?
No, it did. It came out. Like, it's basically dead.
Yeah. No, I saw that. It's like they have an $80 million budget, and the box office is at 80.1 million.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Yeah, it's been out for, I think, either 2 or 3 weeks now.
Yeah, it came out February 14th.
Doomed. It's doomed.
For all theaters. Yeah.
It's doomed.
Well, you keep going woke, you keep being lazy, you keep writing these shitty scripts. Don't expect it to change. It's going to get worse. Like, dude, if it's a hill you want to die on, go ahead, bro. But don't expect us to change, because your shit sucks, bro.
To be fair, though, of everyone that I've seen watch this thing, they've said it's actually not woke. It's just a bad movie.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Like they don't go out of their way, from what I've seen, to demean men or introduce trans people that like don't need to be there, or like as far as I know, race swap anybody. So it seems like it's just a bad movie in general from everything
Yeah.
I've seen, and you can see that whenever you see like clips from it. It's bad.
It's just bad.
It's just a good old fashioned bad movie.
Yeah.
I saw Madam Web earlier today. There wasn't a single part of me that thought, wow, this is just a terrible filmmaker. I could not help but see the myriad of evidence that has been laid at all of our feet that this is a studio that is simply retaining the
Pause
rights
the
to their
video.
characters.
Pause the video.
that
How can you not tell it's a bad filmmaker? I don't understand. I just watched The
When
Legend
they
of
make something
Hercules
bad,
last night. The Legend of Hercules, if y'all are not familiar, I think came out in 2014. Yeah, 2014, and it stars Kellen Lutz in it. It's fucking terrible. The entire movie is so bad that it has, I know we're kind of biased on Rotten Tomatoes with how they are, but it has a 5% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Fucking 5. This movie's terrible. The screenwriting's bad. The acting is bad. Everything about it is bad. So how can you not blame the filmmaker, the guy who is behind everything, or woman behind everything? Like, come on, dude, quit being a fucking simp. Like, oh
Yeah.
my god, this guy's a
Well,
fucking shill.
and this is one of those things that I think, because he's about to get to the audience section, which I think is what made this video controversial from what I've heard. But one thing I want to say before we kind of get there is, I think part of the problem here is that he doesn't want to blame creatives, and instead he wants to blame studios. That's pretty much obvious given what he's just said. But at the same time, he doesn't want to hold the filmmakers responsible for their creative decisions to enact the studio's will, right? And it's the thing. We've seen some people who can take studio interference and make it actually useful,
Yeah, absolutely.
right? Like we can find, like, people are able to stitch things together and make them work.
The Hobbit trilogy is a good example of it.
I'd say that's not a good example.
Yeah, it is.
Like
What we
they're
just talked
they're
about
in
the other day.
no they're in no. I'm talking about like someone who takes studio interference and makes something really great.
Oh, you mean like turn it into
they're
something great, like not good like The Hobbit.
yeah, like someone that can stitch things together in a way that works really well, for the movie on its own. Like I think a large reason why the Hobbit movies were successful was because they tied to Lord of the Rings, and the Lord of the Rings trilogy had a massive appeal, and a lot of people watched them, so a lot of people went back to watch The Hobbit. I feel like if The Hobbit came out first, they would not be nearly as successful.
I don't know. They weren't that bad. They weren't that bad. They weren't the best, but they weren't that bad.
But it is a thing where like there's a declining popularity in the Hobbit, not just in terms of box office revenue, but also like in terms of the like how they get reviewed, like as time goes on. Right? I enjoy watching them, but there's a lot of useless, stupid additions in there that don't need to be there. Right? And it's kind of the opposite thing where those are a case of studio interference like hurts a product that could have been better. Right? Like if we had one super long film for The Hobbit, maybe a 4-hour cut, or maybe two films that were maybe about 2 hours a piece. You could adapt The Hobbit and have it be great, right? But you have to cut shit out. You don't need the dwarf elf romance. You don't need Legolas in the story. You don't need all this other excessive bullshit, just thrown in. And you also need to give the filmmaker some time, right? So I think it's a mixture of studio interference and just padding things to pad things. Like if the studio wanted 3 films, Peter Jackson could have cut a lot of shit and still gotten 3 films. There would have been maybe an hour 40 a piece, but they'd still be like 3 films, right? So, it's one of those things where I've rarely seen studio interference where it turned out good in the end, but I'm confident that if a writer is good enough and a director is good enough and the actors are good enough, they will be able to work around it and make something great.
Yeah, it's like what we talked about the other day. If like you just said, if the writer's good enough, you can throw anything at him, and he'll make a good book or movie. He'll do it. I mean, it's like that story I was telling you about the guy on a forum. I always forget his name, but basically he was having an argument like we're having. If you're a good writer, you can write anything thrown at you. It just is going to take time. And the person said, okay, I want you to write a book about the Roman Legion and Pokemon. The dude literally wrote about it and made I think a series about it. It's pretty popular. I want to look that up again.
Yeah.
But
Well,
it's like
that
it can
thing
be
where like
done.
Yeah, and the thing that people need to understand here is like the studio doesn't give you a script for what they want. They give you notes on the script that you sent in, right? So they'll say, okay, we need more of this, we need more action, we need less action, we need less of this character, more of this character. They basically just give you really vague notes, from what I understand. I don't know of any studio that gives specific notes of this character's arc needs to start here, it needs to end here, and it needs to lead to this. As far as I've able to see from all the different reviewers I watch, studios just give you vague, basic notes on films. And so the job of making those notes work and making the film good is still on the people actually making the fucking film, right? Not the people financing it. And this is one thing, I think it's actually fair for studios to have a little bit of a say in the process because they're fucking paying for it, right? This isn't your vanity project. They're paying you to make a product so they can make money. I think it's fair for them to have a little bit of a say in how it goes, right? Now, a good studio will pick a good writer, a good director, and a good team to work on it and leave them alone and maybe check in every once in a while and just trust in their vision if they think if they're consistently good directors and writers, right? But if they're a writer for something that has not really had to lean on box office success, then you kind of need to be there to make sure they're fucking doing what they need to. But at the end of the day, like I doubt that Madam Web would have been saved if the studio was not involved, right? The writers, like I've seen a couple clips of them, they sound absolutely retarded. Like, there's a quote on the red carpet where they say, we set this story in 2003 so we could use the song Toxic. It's like, you don't have to fucking do that, you idiot.
You don't have to fucking do that, you idiot.
You're setting the song in a decade because you like a song from it. It's not like the song goes away after that year. You know, it's that kind of shit where like you can make things fucking work if you try and you have talent. But it's very obvious when people don't have talent. You know, and this is the kind of thing where I think Stuckmann's kind of biased towards the creator because he's kind of in a similar position of being a creator in that space, right? So he doesn't want to criticize the creators as much as the studio. And I think what we're about to lead into is the thing that I think kind of makes people turn against him completely, because this video is sectioned off into like different sections. The entire second half of the video is audience. And so he's going to have a lot to say about the audience. And I have a feeling that's where things are going to go from bad to fuck.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
Does not care about the quality of this experience they're giving us. They do not care. Studio that is simply retaining the rights to their characters, that does not care about the quality of this experience they're giving us. There's been too many examples of movies that all feel kind of the same, like a mishmashed early 2000s superhero movie. They can't seem to get out of that, no matter.
You mean good superhero movies? Like
yeah, I was about to
Spider-Man,
say, yeah.
Spider-Man 2.
Wait, well, okay.
Dark Knight, not the Dark Knight, but Batman Begins.
Yeah, that's actually a good example. Yeah, I was
Like
thinking about Blade and stuff, how those movies were directed, which some people didn't like about them, but I didn't see a problem with them. A little more, gory and flamboyant's the wrong word, flashy kind of stuff. So maybe that's what he's talking about. I don't know, because would you consider? I mean, I would consider Blade a superhero movie. Like,
well, yeah, like isn't it based off of a superhero? Like, isn't Blade an actual superhero?
I think he's like a vampire who hunts vampires, something like that. It's been a while since I've ever watched it, or been a while since I've watched it, but it's something like that.
Yeah,
it's actually a '98 film. Shit, I didn't realize it was that old. Fuck yeah, dude.
Yeah. Well, I think this is him saying something where we don't really know what he means.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Like we have to interpret whatever the fuck he's saying, and we can interpret to the contrary all we want as well. You know, this is one big problem that I have with people in general that review things, is they say something very nebulous that has no actual purpose instead of saying something specific, right? Like when I talk about shameless plug, my Remembering Transformers 2007 video, I talk specifically about what I like in that film and what I do not like, right? And I talk about them specifically. right? I don't say, oh, the story's crap, but the CGI is cool. It's like, no, like the CGI is cool because of all the effects, all the different shit that's shifting around the robots, the little insignias from Cybertron all over their bodies, how the details of the vehicle appear on the body of the robot and shit. You know, like there are actual things to commend and criticize in that film, and I point out things to criticize and to commend, right? This kind of shit is just, it makes me think of a 2000 superhero movie. It's like, well, you're implying something bad here, but there are a lot of good examples in that time period. It's like, what do you actually fucking mean?
Yeah. Well, that
You
also
know?
comes down to understanding him and his audience. Maybe they're not a fan of the early 2000 superhero flicks. Maybe they like the bigger, the higher budgeted superhero movies like Marvel.
More MCU
I guess I'm just
style
guessing.
stuff.
I don't really know because personally, I'm not a big fan of that stuff as much as the older stuff, like where you had to use more of like good writing to tell a story instead of
Yeah.
just CGI. Like big Thanos ships in the sky and stuff. Which nothing wrong with that because let's admit, Infinity War is fucking amazing. But
Yeah, well, that's the Infinity War is amazing because it's good on a character level,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And that's what all stories come back to are the characters good, right? Because if a story's good, the effects are good, and the music's good, but the characters suck, everything's going to be dragged down by that because you're seeing characters the entire time. You know, and I'd say there's no better example of that than you've not seen this, but the Transformers: The Last Night is a terrible movie by all accounts, right? I'm a defender of the Transformers movies, but that is an actual terrible movie in the franchise. It's terrible by franchise standards too, because of some of the character shit that happens in it. You know, and it's one of those things where like film looks fucking great, the action scenes are really entertaining, but the characterization is just fucking awful.
Yeah.
You know, and that's one reason why, you know, I think character is such an important part of good storytelling. It's one reason why I think Star Wars, the OT was so beloved, is because the characters are so endearing and so interesting and compelling. Same thing with Lord of the Rings. You know, same thing with Joker. Same thing with Infinity War, the first Avengers film, Iron Man 1, Thor 1, Captain America 1. You know, just like all these films are very character focused. You know, and they have a lot of characterization in those films that tells you a lot about the characters with very little. You know, like, Thor being basically a bratty kid that, goes to fight the frost giants, and then Odin has to scold him and be like, you are not worthy of this power. And then he has to learn, humility and shit. Or you have Captain America, jumping on a grenade, thinking that his people are his soldier friends and comrades are going to get hurt, right? That's extremely endearing of character. Same thing with that Spider-Man scene that I mentioned earlier, in Tobey Maguire's first Spider-Man movie, when the Green Goblin drops Mary Jane and that pulley full of kids, you see Spider-Man look at both of them and you see him go after both of them because it tells you so many things in that one little action. And that's what good writing does. It tells you a lot with very little. It's to the point. It's very, it works on different levels, and it lets you understand the character in a different way or a much deeper way. And that's the kind of thing that makes good storytelling good, is you got great characters, that have interesting things to do that affect them as a character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
No matter how many times we've said to this studio, we would prefer it if you went a different way, even with the excellent examples of their two Spider-Verse films. And I can't help but think, who is this for? Who wins here? Is it the audience? It seems like it isn't, guys. Is it the creatives? Definitely not. Is it the studio? Are they making a lot of money because they keep doing this over and over again? Sometimes it makes sense to make a Venom movie. It makes sense to make a Spider-Man movie. Those are characters that are going to generate money no matter what. Morbius and Madam Web, Kraven the Hunter remains to be seen. That is not the same level of reward that a studio might receive from producing a Spider-Man or a Venom movie. So why are they making them? Is it to retain the rights? Is it to get some kind of financial break? Potentially. And in that case, they probably don't care that much about each and every one of us who forks over our hard-earned money to sit in a theater on Valentine's Day when they could have been doing anything else. I care so much about the filmmaker experience And I am so aware of how crushingly difficult it can be to make a film, but I also care a lot about the audience. And I want people like myself who go to these movies to have a good time and to feel like they invested some of their money into something that gave something back to them, that inspired them in some way, or made them just happy for a couple hours. And Sony and their treatment of these characters seems to be doing the exact opposite. Currently in the industry, it's the Wild West when it comes to spec scripts, especially. From what I understand, a lot of spec scripts are not even being read, very rarely, in fact, unless you're a very specific kind of movie or a studio is looking for something so particular that you just so happen to be that perfect thing. From what I
This is one thing that to kind of like, I see what he's saying about it being kind of the Wild West thing, but I think he's using a bad term, because from everything I've heard about, it seems less like it's the Wild West where everyone kind of like figures it out as best they can. It seems more like there are the I don't know what the best term would be, but it's just, studios have the money, people at the studios have the power, and they look down on people, that write scripts until they match a agreeable story or an agreeable talent, so to speak. Like, it doesn't seem like a Wild West thing where everyone's kind of making their own shit work. It seems more like the corporate overlords are looking down, looking at all the little bugs and being like, okay, I choose this one to write a story. I choose this one to be the director. I choose this one. Yeah, it seems more like kind of a it seems more like an abusive god choosing things than like the Wild West. I don't know why he used the Wild West there as a metaphor for this, but maybe he's not in deep enough into the system to really understand how like weird it must be. Anyway,
understand lower budget horror is still being looked at, especially haunted house things or things that are very marketable. But in general, the industry has no idea what it's doing right now post strikes. They have no clue. Movies are selling for almost $20 million at festivals from first time filmmakers, and other movies that seem like they should be selling really big because of the names that are attached aren't. Nobody knows exactly what's happening right now because everyone is so beholden to this algorithm or whatever Netflix is telling them.
Quick.
People want to.
Okay, he mentioned that now when he says studios, I'm going to assume, because this guy, he paints with a very broad brush.
broad and vague.
He's very broad and vague. So I'm just going to give this example. He may be talking about superhero studios. I don't fucking know. He's so broad. One thing you need to do is listen to the audience. And a good example of that, and I will fucking die on this hill, is the movie Thanksgiving that came out last year. Oh my fucking God. That brought back so much nostalgia of Halloween, the original Halloween, and Scream, the OG films of slasher. That film brought so much nostalgia back, and it was great of its own respectfully, it was great. Like, it was its own standalone film. It obviously respected the old franchise. There was no wokeness, there was no this, there was no that. It was just about a small town, loves Thanksgiving, X, Y, and Z happened. Now they have to solve it with ABC. And it was great. So it comes down to looking in the past and figuring out what other films did great that made people at the times love them, and listening to the audience and what they want. If the audience is telling you, look, I want something with more action because X, Y, and Z, or look, I want something that's less woke because of X, Y, and Z, you need to fucking listen to them. I don't understand. You say you're a fan of the audience and you're in that same boat. Well, you should kind of listen to what the people are saying. If the people are saying your shit sucks because of X, Y, and Z, and it's not just one person, it's a mass of people, you probably should listen to that. I don't understand where there's a misunderstanding here of like where
Yeah.
they don't know where to go. It's like, yeah, you do. You're just not wanting to do it because you're greedy and lazy.
Yeah, and I think some of that too is just they pick and choose examples of things that support their sort of current situation that they think is what leads to success. Like when people think about when you make films that are aggressively feminist, it's like to the point of like being downright sexist towards men. right? You know, like they probably go back to, you know, oh, look at Captain Marvel, it made $1 billion. Yeah, 5 years ago. What about all these feminist movies coming out now? They don't break 100 million. It's like you need to take everything at the same time, right? You can't pick and choose examples. You know, it's like saying that every fantasy movie is successful because Fellowship of the Ring did almost $1 billion. It's right. That's not a good measurement. There are tons of fantasy movies that did well, and there are tons of them that did not. Same thing with every other fucking genre, every other type of film, you know, every other type of film in a franchise, whether it be a sequel, prequel, you know, remake, whatever the fuck you have. You know, like you have to take everything into account. You can't just say, oh, this one film did great, so all of the films like that should also do great. It's like, no, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
See,
No, I
this is
understand that.
creating an almost robotic-like dystopian conveyor belt of movies that we are essentially supposed to kneel at the very end of, open our mouth really wide and just consume, and then ask, when do we get the next conveyor belt thing that you have generated for us from your algorithm robotic AI thing, whatever that is. Because when I watched Madam Web, there wasn't a
What?
single part of me that thought a writer sat down and came up with the idea of the final fight happening underneath a giant neon Pepsi Cola sign. I just don't think a writer sat in their apartment in LA and thought, that's a good idea.
I mean,
Why?
we've
Why
heard of
not?
a lot of stupid ideas from writers, dude. Like this is what I think he's giving way too much credit to the people in the creative space, right? Like we've seen a lot of dumb bitches in like the creative space making writing decisions that are blatantly retarded. You know, I mean, like Star Trek Discovery's got a great example where they tried to use sonar in fucking space. Yeah, that happened.
Yeah.
Sonar in space.
I never watched the movie, so
People, it's a series. People are actually retarded sometimes. So you like do not put it past them.
well,
I mean, like look at the Marvels writers, right? They didn't have like hardly from what Bob Iger says about the film, they didn't have enough studio interference to make that film better. You know, a central instigator of the plot of that movie is that Captain Marvel randomly went to this planet and basically destroyed their sun, causing a civil war, a drought, and all this other shit. And then you know how she fixes that problem later in the movie? She just flies through the sun again, restarts it.
nice.
The entire fucking movie is fucking pointless because she starts something that she easily could have ended, and we don't even really know why she started it to begin with. There are idiot writers in Hollywood, Chris. We would hope that you would have known this after being in the review business for 15 fucking years.
Yeah, which
It's like, come on, man. There are bad
Yeah.
writers out there. It's okay to say that.
yeah, I mean that's I'm okay with somebody saying, you know, this could have been a writer issue, but I'm not too sure. This could have been a studio issue, but then saying that you highly doubt that it was, like, why? I mean,
Yeah,
do
he's
you
picking a side where just the creatives have no responsibility.
yeah, it's like, do you not believe in that? Because that's a thing. People really do come up with bad ideas and they think they're good and they're in the right place at the right time. They know the right people and their shit can get passed. I mean, it's not unheard of. Somebody thought Twilight was a good idea, so I mean, look, there's that
Yeah.
shit now. So
Look at that shit. I mean, and this is one thing too, is like, it's like you gotta have like some standards for with this shit. Like you have to be able to call things out, because if we can never call things out, then we can never get things to improve.
well, it all comes back to what he's about to say about, you know, oh, it's the audience fault because the audience isn't open enough to believing that perhaps maybe the reason the writing's so bad is because of the studio and we should be more lenient with the writer and look at the the movie from a different perspective, some dumb bullshit like that. Look, if a
Yeah,
movie
blame
sucks,
blame the
it fucking
people.
sucks.
Yeah, it's like blame the people paying for it, not the people actually fucking making it.
Yeah, I'm gonna blame the studio,
What?
the writers, the filmmaker, the director, the producer,
It's like I'm
the
not.
fucking camera guy. I'm going to blame him.
It's like,
Everybody.
do you blame the CEO of McDonald's when the person cooking your burger fucks it up? No, you blame the
No.
fucker who fucked it up.
Exactly. So
Like he's trying to put blame off of people that totally deserve blame when they make a shitty product.
well,
And
it's also
yeah. Go
well, I
ahead.
was just saying also the reason I said I blame everybody is because, while that's drastic, I really don't blame the cameraman. It's even from the perspective of the higher ups at places like Sony, when people made the joke about how Morbius was so great, you should re-release it. You remember that whole big debacle that went down?
Yeah,
And
they memed a film back into theaters.
yeah, and that's where I blame the higher ups. It's like you're so out of touch with your audience. I can get behind why people do not like you, but at the same time, I can get on a filmmaker's ass and saying, dude, you don't have the balls to tell these guys this is shit. I'm just gonna go somewhere else. Like if you really truly are a creative person and you believe in being creative and that's all you believe in, you don't give in. You just fucking don't. It's just not a deal. To me at least. I'm not gonna sit here and pull a fucking Sandman series and change everything because you want to. It's like, no, I'm not gonna do that. Or even in this case, like if it is Sony's fault, have balls, stand up to them, say, no, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
do that. Get
It's also a
fired.
thing too where it's like, okay, so if this is Sony's fault, is it Sony's fault that Spider-Man No Way Home made almost $2 billion?
Yeah.
Is
I see
that
what you're saying.
is that an example of good studio interference? Is that an example of the studio having a good set of ideas that lead to profitability and a film that a lot of people love? It's that thing where he's not applying the standards evenly.
Yeah,
He just wants to
exactly.
give the creatives just get them off the hook. It's like, no, they're the ones that deserve most of the blame. And this is one thing too, is like studio heads can fuck things up, right? I'm a firm believer that, studio heads that give notes can ruin things. It's pretty well known that, a lot of people at Lucasfilm, the super activists in the upper echelon like Kathleen Kennedy and the people around her give a lot of retarded notes that force films to be worse and force series to be worse, right? But that doesn't mean that the makers of the shows didn't make a bad show in the end. Right? They still made a bad story. They still made a bad product, a bad movie, a bad series. Blame can go to everybody in the process of getting the money ready, getting the project greenlit, getting it made, and then getting it released. Everybody a part of that process can be blamed for something if something is wrong. It's simple.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. All right, let's play this cuck again. See what he's got to say.
I'm pretty sure Sony said we have to incorporate Pepsi in some way and deal with it. And that's what it's like for a lot of these creatives. I just heard a story today about someone who's working with a massive entity studio, I won't say what it is, who has hired that person to write a story based off of a very interesting hook. He wrote the whole script, came back to them, and they said, you know what, we don't really like that hook anymore, but we still like your story. Can you make it work without the hook? And this poor writer is trying to figure out how in the world they got hired to write a story based off of an idea and are now told to write the exact same story, but without the idea. And that's exactly the type of situation that so many writers find themselves in. And I would not be surprised if a lot of these Sony Spider-Man universe movies have had very similar conversations bouncing around their meetings.
If that actually
in every
happened,
single one that made lots of money, in every single one that people like, in every single one that was successful, besides these recent Sony shitheads.
Yeah, no.
Again,
no,
it's that application of a standard, Chris.
No, I agree with that, but I will say this: if that actually seriously did happen to that poor writer, I would actually feel bad for them because that's like, what am I? We like the we like the idea, but we don't like the idea. Yeah, that's it's like, what? That doesn't what? Could you imagine being in the room if that was actually said? Now I take what he says with a grain of salt, but
yeah,
it's like imagine being a fly on the wall of that conversation. Could you write this without the idea? It's like what?
Yeah, write Star Wars without the Force.
It's like what?
what? It's like, and that's the thing. I believe there are idiots everywhere, right? You know, I'm sure there's plenty of idiots in the corporate area of Hollywood. There's plenty of them in the production area. There's plenty of them in the actors. Plenty of them in distribution. You know, there's plenty of idiots everywhere, right? There's also plenty of hardworking people that want to make a good story, and maybe they just don't have enough talent to make a good story, right? But they're trying and they're learning and they're growing, right? There's also ones that are experienced and are good at what they do, you know? But that doesn't mean that they get let off the hook because, you know, idiots are going to be idiots. And if they make an idiotic mistake, they should be held to the standard that they are not an idiot, so they shouldn't make idiotic mistakes. And again, it's just this thing of where he's riding the fence so damn hard in favor of like the people on the production side of things that it comes across as extremely disingenuous. It's like he's trying to not be a corporate shill while also being a studio like creative shill. So it's like he's in this weird space where he's like, the studios are all the problem. It's never the people actually making the thing. It's always studio, always studio.
Yeah.
It's like just apply a standard and keep it consistent.
It's maddening, and it does good for no one. So what are my solutions for this? It's the same solution I've said for a couple years now, because I've started to make more discussion-based videos about the industry and how we can communicate with them and get better films and start to enjoy the theater-going experience more, and not just hope that a great film like Godzilla -1 comes out of Japan so that we can enjoy that here. And it's the same thing I've always said. They hear us through our wallets. If a movie comes out that is genuinely great and we happen to see it in the theater, that's fantastic. But then buy it to own on digital or buy the Blu-ray of it. Let them know, like, this is more like it. And that's what we're getting with Oppenheimer. It's what we're getting with Barbie. When you see a movie where it's like, okay, that creator, Greta Gerwig, took an IP, Barbie, and made a completely original.
People actually really like Barbie. Like grown ass adults like Barbie.
It made like $1.5 billion.
Y'all are some sad fucks. Y'all are some really sad fucks.
Yeah.
Jesus.
I think Barbie's actually interesting because I think that you can like it for, I think there's a group of people that like it just because it's like women that like girly shit. But then I think there's another audience to that who like it ironically because it kind of proves the point of like, it kind of, it's unintentionally based if you view it like that. Because, you know, like Ken's the best character in the film. Like most people agree that Ken's the best character in the film. And also he's the actual like oppressed minority in Barbie world. So like it's a film that feminists think they're fighting for equality, but you can view it as them fighting for a matriarchy, which is no different than what they think the patriarchy does to them. So you can kind of look at the film as an unintentional satire of its own sort of concept. But anyway.
Yeah.
Original movie out of it, and it became the highest grossing film of the year, and it's nominated for multiple Oscars, even though she totally should have been nominated for director. They hear that. They understand, all right, so IP-ish, but original. Got it. And that's okay. Like, there's so many openings for filmmakers to take very original ideas into things. In an ideal, perfect industry, the filmmaker-studio relationship would be more of an understanding, loving relationship. But the problem right now is that so many studio executives, people who are making the decisions, did not come from a place of creativity. They were potentially managers or agents or people outside of the creative space in Hollywood who worked their way into a place where they're now telling creatives what to do. That's not the case for all of them, but it is the case for many of them. And they don't have ideas. They just have like inklings of what the market might want. What's selling big? What's not selling big? Well, we need to go towards this path because that movie sold really big. People are looking for this. Our Netflix algorithm is suggesting that we need to make a movie about kung fu pirates who also cook. Like, that's what's happening. And it sounds like a joke, but I'm swear to you, it's not. It's not a joke. So people have been put in positions of power who want to be creative, but aren't creative. but they're put in a position where they now have to tell creatives what to do. And that's why you're seeing a lot of these things that you're seeing in film lately. And the hopes are that more filmmakers are able to break through with like an indie film. Look at Nolan. He was able to kind of prove himself. He took those steps. You know what I mean?
I gotta go back to that.
Nolan. He was able to kind of prove himself. He took those.
That's not a very flattering picture of Nolan.
Nah.
He's like, "You're Batman. Let's get serious."
Yeah. That girl side-eyeing the fuck out of Bruce Wayne right now. Look at her. Like, Jesus, bro.
He's
I think
like,
somebody's
"Dude, you
actually
look
doing something to her
ridiculous."
hair. Yeah.
Well, probably hair and makeup doing shit.
Yeah.
Those steps. You know what I mean? In the case of a lot of these filmmakers who make their first movie as a giant studio film, the studio does not look at that filmmaker as if they are an equal. They look at them as if they're someone they can boss around and tell them what to do because they're paying the bills. And what have you done exactly?
Well, I think that's a thing where he kind of just owned his own point for himself because, you know, when you look at a lot of these people in recent sort of Marvel productions, both in terms of outside of Sony and within and inside Sony, you know, the director, from what I've seen, and I think you mentioned this, is the director of Madam Web has only done TV before. So she's not used to the medium of telling a story in a movie, right? That's already a problem that you have to overcome, right? And then you've also got, you know, Marvel had a really bad case of this in Phase 4 and 5, where they got these creatives that had directed films that were on tiny budgets, like $15 million budget, make a quirky, like Oscar bait sort of drama film or some weird little indie film. And then you give them this massive $300 million budget to make this action superhero ensemble movie, you know, like Eternals. Like the director of that had never done anything big budget like that before. And you just expect it to turn out well when they are not experienced in how to do this shit. Same thing with the Marvels, like little independent creator, you know, independent sort of like small time film producer, director gets put on a massive project, you know, and then on top of that, you have the whole problem of Marvel has all these different fight sequences already pre-made, and they just have to stitch them into the movies somehow. It's like the whole system is fucked, right? You've got incompetent people in roles put there by other incompetent people who have incompetent systems in place to make incompetent products. It's like the whole system is broken from the bottom to the top. You know, that's one thing I like as a film reviewer who's like talking about the industry, he should know this shit, right? I'm just a dipshit with a computer and I know this shit.
Well, I'm not gonna lie to you either. I really don't know the point he's trying to make here. I mean, where's he trying to go with it? I don't under. Is he trying to say that basically, as the audience, we need to be more understanding that the studio execs are the ones to blame and are possibly through circumstances that he gives us for examples that these big studio execs are giving these writers and filmmakers a harder time because they're ditching ideas or telling them to write ideas without the hook or the idea itself to do something different. Is that what he's trying to get across? Because what I don't understand is, you know, I can't really see blaming the audience for something if it's so widespreadly agreed upon that it's a bad film. Like there's a certain niche of people, whether you and I like or not, who love Twilight. Like they just love it, and it's fine because it's a romantic young teenage girl dream and idea of being seduced by a vampire. I guess I don't know. My fiance loves this series. I hate it. I can't stand it. But you know, when you have two aisles of different people who enjoy different things coming together saying shit like, you know, Madam Web's terrible because the fact that it's just broke even, technically it's in the negatives if you count like advertisement and all those other things you have to throw into the number for the budget. You know, then that's like that's not really an audience problem. That's actually a studio problem and a filmmaker problem where they're not listening and they're not good at their job. So, you know, I don't understand where he's trying to go with this, to be honest with you. Like I don't
Yeah, I think
See the point.
Yeah, I think he's trying to make the. This is one thing I got a kind of part one to this and a part two to this, and then I really have to fucking pee. But so part one of this is I think what he's trying to say is that the studios are the root of the problem in a lot of modern media. But what it comes across as is he's trying to blame something that's nebulous, where there's no face to put the blame towards, right? Because when you blame corporation, you blame corporation. You don't blame individuals, right? Like when you criticize, when I criticize the Marvels, or when anyone criticizes the Marvels, we can criticize the director specifically for the direction she chose to go in. We can criticize the actors specifically for giving poor performances, for just not being good at acting. We can criticize the special effects people working at Marvel because they did a terrible job with CGI, right? We can criticize specific people or specific types of people within a certain production. He's just saying blame the studio. You know, he's basically making an excuse for all these creatives to continue to write dog shit stories in the first place, right? Studio notes are not going to fix a dog shit story most of the time, right? It would probably take a hell of a good, studio executive to know storytelling to be like, okay, this story is shit. Here are ways to improve it. And if you don't acquiesce to these requests, we're pulling funding, right? I doubt that happens often, but I'm sure it could. But it's a shit product to begin with, and studio just makes it worse. And I think that's sort of where this video kind of diverges from what he thinks he's saying versus what we're seeing, which is him basically giving all these creatives an out that are probably terrible at their jobs by saying, oh, it's the studio's fault. It's the boogeyman. It's the boogeyman. I didn't do it.
Yeah.
All right. And on that note, I have to pee. Otherwise, I'm going to fucking die. So talk about something.
Something.
Bye. Be right back.
We'll just wait for him to get back. There's not much left to be said, really. Just seems like a very awkward video. Very awkward man. Or maybe I'm just retarded. It could be that. I could be very, very well retarded and out of my element here. That's always a possibility. Definitely gonna have to be watching some positive shit after this. I'm tired of watching these fucking dickheads. Jesus. Fucking boogieing out this guy. I might want to fucking have an aneurysm. I definitely see the gerbil. I see the gerbil now that Zach was talking about. Oh my god. Oh god.
All right. I'm back.
Good. Not much was said. I made some points here and there, but that was about it. I did say he does remind me of a gerbil. I finally see it with this fucking picture, the still frame of him.
You see it now.
He's got like a fucking fat face. Looks
Now
like
you're a believer.
I imagine him with one of those like water bottles that rabbits and gerbils like drink out of. I just imagine him drinking out of that.
Yeah, you can see it now. You can see it now.
Yeah. Plus, I don't really like this guy. I just feel like he's.
And this is one thing too, like just for people who are going to be like, why are you making fun of him like that? That's such a mean thing. It's like, I will make fun of anybody for having an appearance in general. Like people that exist, I will make fun of their appearance because I think it's funny, right? if you look like a horse, I'm going to say you look like a horse. If you
Yeah.
look like a gerbil, you look like a gerbil. You know,
Well-
I look like a fucking vampire. So, but unattractive. So I'm fine with that. Make fun of me all you want. I'm a pasty fuck, right?
A very hairy, pasty vampire. Yes.
Yeah, I'm like a slightly less fat neck beard.
This, I don't know. I don't think there's anything wrong making fun of people. I mean, it is what it is. Y'all just need to toughen up a little bit.
The gerbil.
And that's a lot of what we're seeing
The
now. So
gerbil.
pay for movies that are good. Keep paying for movies that are good. That's the only way that we can turn the dial to where it needs to be. Guys, thank you so much as always for watching.
What the fuck was this about? I mean, you say like pay for something that's good. That's what we're doing, bro.
I have to
what
talk
are you
about
on
this.
about?
What did we talk about? Like, what is
Yeah.
this?
What the fuck are we talking about here? Like,
Yeah, and this is one thing too. Is like he's got a good he's got the point of vote with your wallet, but the problem is a lot of people aren't going to Hollywood for stories so much as just entertainment, right? So this is why we get these big blockbuster films that are terribly written but are really entertaining for the masses, like the Jurassic World movies, right? Those things are notorious for having just terrible stories, but they each make like $1 billion fucking dollars. Right?
Yeah.
This is part of the reason why we have the whole like MonsterVerse thing with all the like American Godzilla movies. They're basically just taking a giant action figure of Godzilla and a giant action figure of whatever the fuck he's fighting and just having them fight for like 2 hours, right? It's a thing where there's not a lot of story you can do with that with them. So you just end up with just a generic monster action movie where they just beat the shit out of each other, right? It's not actually that well written. It's usually clunky, you know? It's the kind of thing where like these movies are just dumb popcorn flicks and they're the ones making a lot of money now, right? There are a couple ones that make a lot of money that are good, right? But it's a thing where like people are coming to Hollywood for just pure stupid escapism, not good, well-written escapism. You know, and I think that's something he's kind of like forgetting about.
I didn't realize this, but Madam Web, I was like, man, this girl looks familiar. Oh, that's
50
the girl who.
Shades.
Yeah, I was like, whoa. I was like, I actually
50
think
Shades of 50 Shades of Web.
she's a very gorgeous woman. So I
It's
will give her
webbing
credit.
time.
It's
Dude,
web-
the red carpet for Madam Web is more entertaining than the movie.
Yeah.
Partially because you had like two of the actresses dressed up in like web dresses where it's like showing next to nothing, next to everything besides like nipples and shit.
Yeah, nipples.
Yeah. But see how he ends this. It's probably just an outro for a minute, which I hate the outros that don't have anything besides thanks and subscribe. It's like I will subscribe. I'm autonomous enough to know when to subscribe if I want more. Thanks for telling me like I'm a fucking idiot.
I really do like making these discussion videos. I do think that as I learn more about the industry, I have a unique position to be able to discuss ways that we can make it better.
Unique ways, as in saying the studio's the bad guy. Wah.
Yeah. For real.
Ways that we can help it, and hopefully in the end do what we all want, is to see good movies and have fun watching them and feel inspired. That's what we all want, right? We want to see good movies. So thank you as always for watching, guys. Look forward to more videos very soon. I've got another feature presentation video coming out this Sunday. I'm very excited about it. It's definitely not a fun movie, but it is an excellent movie called Grave of the Fireflies. If you've never seen it, it's a really tough watch, but it's an absolutely monumental achievement that I have been wanting to talk about for many years. Guys, thank you so much. As always, look forward to more videos very soon. And if you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmanized.
All right. So that was that. That was that video. And all of the glory of it.
Yeah,
Let's actually take a look down at some comments here. See what we got. If you see BS happening, nothing wrong with calling it out. Yeah, pretty fair. Someone owes an apology to all the people who worked on Jaws: The Revenge. I love how he doesn't even realize that by refusing to review the movie and saying he wants to keep his channel positive, he's inadvertently telling us how he really, really hates it. Yeah, which is kind of the thing, right? Whenever you exclude something because you don't want to talk about something negative, you're inherently saying that this thing is negative, like that this thing sucks.
Yeah.
You got my favorite part was when Chris said, "It's filmmaking time." Heard about the filmmaking experience all over the theater. Truly one of the non-reviews of all time. Chris, it's not the writer's fault. The writers. Literally the only reason we wrote the movie set in 2003 was to use the song Toxic.
Jesus.
And this is a good comment here. You don't need to bash them. Just tell the truth in a respectful way. It's like, yeah, like we're cheeky bastards, right? We like poking fun at people and making fun of shit, right? So we're going to make fun of shit. But if you want to do it in a really respectful, calm way, you can do that too. The point is that the criticism comes across, right? It doesn't really matter how it comes across as long as it is getting across. Okay, this is, yeah, see, this is more of like a positive comment saying like, never feel bad about, wait a minute, what? Okay, yeah, this is the thing where it's like kind of a respectful way of saying the second that you feel bad about refusing to criticize something, you are no longer a reviewer, which is kind of the point. This is one thing too. This could be a bad take that he learns from, right? And this is one thing that I want to stress with like every reaction we do to somebody, right? Like if you like, people need to be allowed to change, and that's something that's really bad in sort of social media age. Is people think that, oh, you said this thing 15 years ago, you obviously hold that opinion still today. It's like they may not, right? They may not. That opinion might change, and just so many people are stuck thinking about all this like other shit that probably isn't even relevant to a person's livelihood anymore.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was pretty fun.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I feel like that guy definitely should learn from this mistake, because otherwise he needs to change his profession if he's not going to critique something.
Yeah, if you can't criticize something, then you can't be a critic.
Yeah.
I
mean, I don't like critics. I hate critics, but I can respect them if they're a true critic that will not let up if you fuck up. Or even if you do good, they'll tell you what's wrong with it, what they didn't like. I can respect that. I can't respect somebody who says, I'm a critic, but I don't want to criticize because I want to be positive. It's like, bro, your job is to be a critic. Critics generally are not very positive. It's okay.
Yeah, you can't be a good critic if you like everything you review.
You're not a critic at that point. You're just a fanboy.
And that's a disservice to fanboys. Like it's just you're just like at that point you're just going, I like thing, and that's the whole review.
Yeah, for real. Excuse me. But I was also telling the people in the chat that the next time we do this, we gotta watch something positive, because I'm fucking tired of watching these guys. They're gonna give me an aneurysm. Yeah. Fucking boogieing now, this guy, Jesus.
I actually thought about us rewatching Detective Heart of America, the feature film.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Just have fun.
Yeah, that's definitely better than Madam Web.
Yeah, that is in the list of things that we can do for ESAS. So we will definitely think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and overall, like that whole Stuckmann video was a thing where it's one of those things where it's controversial because of how non-committant he is to letting people criticize the people that actually make stuff. Right? I think it's kind of the point. Like if people see that video, they might think, oh, it's not that bad. He just doesn't want to be negative. It's like, well, when you listen to what he actually said, he is saying that, it's the studio's fault. Don't blame the people actually making the thing when they're the ones actually making the thing. It's like you need to be able to criticize everybody in the production process.
Yeah.
And also, if you're not going to be willing to be negative, then you may as well just not have a review, because, again, I think a lot of people have been saying this, is like, what good is your opinion if I know it's only going to be positive for the things you review?
Yeah.
You know, the only thing that I come to your channel for is seeing what you think of a film, and it's always going to be positive. Then I don't need to watch your video. I don't need to watch it if I know that it's going to be only positive. And even then, if you go into details about the film, it's like I could probably watch 100 other people who would actually have opinions that would be interesting and would still give me the same plot summary that you're about to give me. Right? Critical Drinker is a good example of that. He's incredibly entertaining whenever he gives his, reviews. It's just that you have to be willing to criticize shit. Like, criticism is for everything.
Yeah. No, I agree with that.
Yeah. Well, so I guess that's it for this ESAS. That was pretty fun.
Yeah.
Enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was good. I mean, I definitely
We got Stuckmanized.
yeah, I mean, not a bad guy. Just I don't like the.
He's kind of a coward.
Yeah, I don't like the indecisiveness.
Yeah.
Like, be decisive. If you don't like it, say, "Yo, Sony, you fucked up. I don't like you." Piss on you. Like, don't be like, or "Hey, filmmaker, don't like you."
Yeah. And this
You
is one
fucked
thing
up.
too, is like he could have qualified that as well, right? During the video of saying, I understand a lot of people don't like Madam Web. I myself don't like it. I think it's pretty badly made, but I don't think all of the blame should be on the people who made it, right? That would be a perfectly reasonable way to start this out and say, I want to talk about the studio system and how they interfere with filmmaking, right? That'd be a perfectly neutral way to bring it up and just be like, while we can agree that certain films are good or bad, we should also, take it as a grain of salt, that maybe it's not the film they wanted to make. Maybe the studios interfered, and you could bring that up in a more natural way than just saying, I'm not going to review Madam Web because it's not what people wanted to make. It's totally the studio's fault. Subscribe for more milk toast takes. Studio bad. Director good. Subscribe. It's just like, come on, man.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I understand. I understand where you're coming from. It's like
he could have made this video better. That's what I'm saying.
Honestly, here's the thing. He shouldn't even made a movie. He should have just made a post about it on YouTube. He just made a post about it and said, "Look, I watched it. It's bad, and I don't have enough to say about it." I don't know if it's one of those things where you don't want to sit here waving my hands like Donald Trump. What the fuck's wrong with me? I'm doing the whole hand thing he's doing. I don't know why. I've never done that in my entire life. I've never. I mean, if it comes to that point where he can't give an honest review of it and he has to go through something like this, I would think a post would just be better. And just don't stream it. Don't make a video about it. Just make a YouTube post and move on to the next thing. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I just feel like that video was a waste of time. It was a waste of time.
Yeah. Basically just 16 minutes of him saying that, studios get the wrong idea and, they're the bad guy here. They're the reason that bad movies get made. It's like, no. Studios do interfere, and that is bad. That does fuck things up. But they're not the only ones, Chris. They're not the only ones.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
All right. Okay. Before we wrap this up, anybody that watches this, feel free to leave links in the comments of the re-uploads of these on the ESAS channel. They all go up on the Every Saturday a Stream channel, and I've changed the format to where I can put the chat in, so that'll be fun. Kind of like EFAP does it, where they save the chat. That way, if the video gets demonetized for whatever reason, we still have the chat. So that'll be cool. But yeah, so leave a comment in those videos when they come up, just letting us know if you have any other videos that you'd like us to react to. I enjoy reacting to these things. They're a lot of fun, and also gives people some insight into different topics at different times. And they're just a lot of fun to go through, especially with a friend over here. And so, yeah, depending on if one or both of us is available, I will be reacting to different things. So we'll see what happens next on the old reaction chopping block. But yeah, is there anything that you'd like to say before we go?
No, I'm pretty good. I hope the rest of y'all have a absolutely fucking horrendous day.
I hope
Fuck
you have
each
a
and every one of
blessed
you.
weekend.
Yeah, fuck all y'all bitches. I'm just kidding. Jesus Christ, I can't keep a straight face saying that. Nah, I don't have anything to add. Just don't be like this guy. Be decisive. Don't be
Have an
indecisive.
opinion that you can substantiate.
Yeah, I mean, just
Have a point.
yeah, I guess. I don't know. That I just feel like we wasted our time with that one, man. To be honest.
That was just 60 minutes of going, what do you mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's not necessarily what do you mean. It's like, oh, I understand how you are now. You're a coward. Like you're afraid to
You don't
openly
want to blame the
criticize.
people that
Yeah,
make shit.
you're just a coward. Yeah, it's okay. I mean, it's not okay, but whatever
Yeah.
floats your boat, bro.
Yeah.
He still got 2 million subs, so.
Well, either way. All right. Well, we are going to say goodbye for now. And so we will see you guys, I think, next Saturday. I think I'm going to be doing ESAS then. We'll see if Swabby can get on or not. We'll see. But yeah, we'd just like to thank you all for joining us today. And we, at least I hope that you have a good rest of your weekend. Swabby hopes you die in a fire. So,
Precisely.
God bless and see y'all later.
Facts.